So then, we are back with more understandings from the Renewed Covenant, from the Aramaic English translation of the Word. These translations from the very original documents from the time of old, from the time of Israel, and also the prophets of old, giving us directives in the future, what the future would bring us. So then, understanding from the time of the prophets what they gave us, we can easily understand the government of the trades of the end. And we understand also a very important factor during the time of the Great War. Unfortunately, China during the time, they never waged a war outside of their country, and they became very vulnerable when they were invaded. As we understand from the time of the war and pre-war times, Japan was extremely cruel, and they invaded China and they tried to take them over. And we have videos today of extremely gruesome situations that went on, very brutal and very ugly. And then during the time of the war, we also had taken the time to teach the Chinese. And boy, we certainly at the start we did a great job, did we not? Because we provide them with what was required, at least to get them started. And then when we understand these days we are living in, our resources are very depleted, but we have done our part. We should be proud of ourselves during the time that we spend with the Chinese. For instance, the colonel that taught them aviation and then pilot fighting. And then during the time of the war, they were able then to get teachings from us. And then afterwards they began to develop. So it's truly quite a joy understanding that during these times of rebuilding, they can retreat from the world, while then the very friends that we taught, then they are capable of taking on this new responsibility. And then we can humble ourselves because we can't overstand further. We simply can't do it. We are broken. We must be retrieving from the world and then rebuilding. Part of being humble is recognizing that our country can't give anymore. We are not able to give. We are extremely depleted. And we must be humble. But we have done our part. We have taught them as much as we could. But at the moment we are interfering with the phase that the Creator Himself has set on His agenda. And we have the record of it. We must be humble, otherwise we become then a hindrance. And so far the Chinese are extremely understanding and then very flexible. So let's make a deal with them and get our debts paid and then refurbishing ourselves for some time. It's very wise. Because their military might started from us, helping them of the first steps, and then from then on, they knew how to catch the fish, did they not? They were able to learn, and then they became a might. And they never waged a war, so it's very safe giving them then this leadership. And they are going to take it on anyway, because the scripture Yahweh has indicated us. So this is the perfect time for us to begin to retrieve and let them take over. In terms of the protection of the seas, and then there is another phase that we must also indicate so they can place a policy where then the nations can do precisely what we are trying to do, but we have no capability. You maintain the global trade and then make sure the countries they can come together for trade, and they understand it very perfectly, in fact. But we as Americans should be proud because we taught them. During the time they were in a position where they did not have the knowledge or the understanding because they were peaceful people. There were no reason back then for them to learn war, because their culture, their understandings were never geared towards war. Why would you go over there in another country to steal? Didn't make any sense. But then they were stolen from. Then they were forced themselves of coming up with their own armies. So we must be humble. We must humble ourselves so then later we can return. And the world is going to be in great hands. We are not giving them to any kind of a group that doesn't have understanding. They have understanding. And we taught them. And we should be humble then to let them take over for some time, and then while we rebuild. Very positively they would be able to give us a deal in what we owe them, so then we can work ourselves and get our economy at least, stabilized. And then we can do trade in the future. This is the perfect time to make a deal with them, because we are interfering with South China Sea. And then we are interfering ourselves in Australia, and they are concerned with it. Because it's a very genuine concern. From the viewpoint of trade and partnership, doesn't make any sense. What are we doing over there in those countries if we are not trading with them? Rather than gathering ourselves and rebuilding. That's what Chinese would do in our position. So we must humble ourselves because we have done our job. We have done as much as we could. We helped other countries, we helped other nations. We taught many people, we gave them technologies. But now it's the time for us then to rebuild. It takes the humble part of each person recognizing the serious situation that we are in. And certainly it's not a very pleasing time. But then humbling, it's not very pleasing either. But we must do it because we understand our monetary system is at jeopardy. If we were watching then the Titanic going down and then those people playing the instruments on top deck, wouldn't you say, why are you not going in the lifeboats? But they were so prideful. They thought the ship would never sink. So what the Chinese is saying to us, in other words, then, what are you doing over there? You have no trade. We must come to our senses and understand the true understanding of Scripture, and then trust our leaders. Our president has a plan for the next 40 years of rebuilding our country. Why do you think he's removing the military from the Middle East? Very gradual, but they are coming back because we must rebuild. And then very gradual, when the Chinese begin to come up with their own ships, then, can you take over this area? Then they take over the area, we then retrieve for rebuilding. And then another part of the world, then as they develop then their navy further, then they take over another part of the world. And then we rebuild. And at the end of the 4 years, when it stabilized, then we can ask you, where could we help? And then as we understand, we can yet be a very big force in South America. If we are wise and understand that we must rebuild, we must start our rebuilding in terms of quality of equipment that we used to do in the past. We used to make them lasting high quality equipment, and we have the entire South America also that we could be part of. And then by this time, then the Chinese are already engaging in a very problematic area of the world. And then doing precisely what each leader of those troublesome nations want. They want stabilization, they want more means for their people, they want more trade. Now let's give them what they want. And let's verify what kind of a God they believe. Because if they do what they say, then they have what they wish for. And we rebuild. The plan of Yahweh works perfectly. So this time of reflection is extremely important and understand where we came from. Prior of the Second World War, how the country was doing, how we were trading, how we were then developing. But we must be humble. And humble comes a time where we can't do it anymore. And then we delegate the lead to our friends. They never waged the war before, so they're going to be precisely where they should be. And then the world is going to be in great hands. And teaching military to a country never waged the war, that's a great positive. So then we can refresh ourselves for the next 40 years and rebuild. While we can make a deal yet, because if we impose ourselves, we are going to be in an extreme situation. We should never impose ourselves. At this moment, very crucial, we must rebuild, we must retrieve. It's the wisest decision we could ever make. Then the world would recognize, boy, those people are smart. Because yet in the past it was required for them to be around the world because of the ending of the war. The world was in shambles. So we had to extend ourselves in order to maintain at least organization. But then came a time where the world is organized and we are disorganized. Time of rebuilding. It's our time to refresh ourselves. We give the lead to those who are then absolutely qualified, and then we regularly make visits, and then we move on. fits perfectly with the plan of the Creator, requiring understanding, humbling, rebuilding, partnerships, responsibility. And please stay tuned, much more coming up, because in Revelation then you can understand more of this huge plan of the end. Please stay tuned.